All right, and joining me today is Mateo Vogel, who fights Timothy Cuamba at Dana White's Contender Series Week 4. That fight is on August 29th. So, Mateo, I wanted to start here. You get the call that everybody wants. Everybody who's not in the UFC wants that call for either the short notice fight or the Contender Series. What was your reaction like when you did finally get that call to perform in front of the boss?
You know what? It feels like it fits, honestly. I was waiting on an opportunity like that. It's been a long time coming, and you know what? I honestly expected it after my last victory, doing what I said, and just beating a guy at that level of experience. I just kind of knew that the call was coming. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, and I was going to ask you about that too, because a lot of people in these larger regional promotions, the LFAs, the CFFCs, and like you're up there fighting in Canada, one of the biggest promotions as well. You get the belt, and it's like almost automatic that you go to one of these shows. But you actually defended it a couple of times. Was it surprising that you had to kind of go through that kind of ringer for it?
I wouldn't say it was surprising necessarily. I won the title, obviously, but I think maybe what needed to be done was exactly what I requested. I had been beating guys. I've beaten a lot of good guys in my career so far, but the first two guys that I had the belt against were other young up and comers. I think I just needed to show that I could do it against a veteran. You know what I mean? And I really did that. I managed to finish the guy, and the guy has 27 fights. You know what I mean? So I think maybe that was what was necessary to really show that I belong at that next level and solidify that.
And you mentioned that those fights against high level opponents. You fought guys like, Damon Blackshear, who's fighting in the UFC next week, and, Garrett Armfield, who's fighting in the UFC, I think right before your Contender Series fight, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. What is it like for you to have, these guys who you've, rubbed elbows with, and one of which you've beat in the UFC, showing you that, you're already that level?
Well, that's the thing, is that I've known it for a long time, and rather than be upset or bitter about anything, I'm actually thankful for it, because I think it's just a testament to how good I really am and how I've been at this level for a long time. You know, I'm not in a rush necessarily I wasn't like, not that I'm not in a rush, but like I'm not upset about any of that. Like those fights for me, like Garrett Armfield, Damon Blackshear, those were growing experiences for me. You know, even though I came away with a victory, it just those fights, were really career making fights for me, and they tweaked my game in such a way to make me just that much more mature and that much more ready to fight in the UFC. You know, I also have the one and only victory over Siri, who's also fighting in the Contender Series right after me. You know what I mean? He's 9-1, and I'm his only one. So I think it's just, I'm almost proud that these are crown jewels for me. I'm proud of the caliber of guys that I've beaten, and I think if you really want to fight in the UFC, you have to be ready to fight the best. There shouldn't be any cans on your record if you're looking to fight in the UFC. There shouldn't be all these guys with negative records. You know what I mean? Like I've beaten. I think there's one guy left on my record with a negative record out of 10 fights.
That's pretty impressive. Now, you mentioned in there too, not being in a rush, not feeling like you had to get there quicker or slower, anything like that. It'll come when it comes, sort of. But at a certain point, when you had fought in those guys with, like you said, short records because they're up and coming prospects like you were, did you start to like demand that you needed somebody a little bit bigger? Like what eventually led you to getting that, that title defense against the guy, like you said, with 28 fights on his career?
Well, I called him. That's the thing, is that I called out for. I said, give me somebody with some experience. Give me somebody who's tested their metal. The last guy, he's beaten UFC vets. You know what I mean? He's been in there with some of the best. So uh, yeah, I called it out, and I exactly like I did. I knocked it right out of the park.
You absolutely did. Now, I wanted to ask you a little bit about this upcoming fight too, because it's a guy who you might already be familiar with. I was wondering because I was looking at that CFFC card you were on, and he actually fought just before you and Blackshear on that card.
Yeah,
Did you get a chance to see him? Did you run into him? What was it like knowing that, hey, maybe I already know this guy a little bit?
yeah. I've seen him before. We fought on the same card. I know he likes to bring it. I know he's a fast, hungry kid, but you know, I, based on what I've seen, I think like anything, man, I'm not going to shy away from any challenge. I'm ready to rock. I'm ready to take any man's head off at this point, whether it's Timmy or whether it's, whether it's the top level guys in the UFC. I don't really care, man.
I love it. Now, before we get to talking too much about that fight, I do always like to ask this question, especially of fighters who have unique nicknames. I'm a guy who loves a good MMA nickname, and
Yeah.
Carapato, I come to understand is translated to the Tick. So tell me
That's
a
right.
little bit. Tell me a little bit of how you became the Tick.
I've been grappling since I was a kid, right? So I've been training since I was really, really young. Um, and through over the years, I got to train with a number of Brazilians as well. And I was this little kid, and I would take everybody's back, and nobody could escape my notorious back control, which is where I have a massive percentage of my finishes from, is all from the back position, right? But the fact is, like, I take everyone's back, and nobody can get out of my back control. So they all started calling me Carrapato. They all started saying that I'm stuck like a tick, and the nickname is stuck with me, and so is the style.
I dig it. I dig it. Now let's talk about how that style particularly matches up with Cuamba, because he's a guy who likes to mix it up on the ground a little bit too. Shoots a lot of takedowns. Do you expect him to bring that kind of style against you, being that you are so well versed on the ground?
He might. Like I've said in the past, I don't come in here with a lot of presumptions about my opponents. I watch them, I study them, I learn. I've got a very high fight IQ against anyone. But I'm not going in there with presuming that someone's going to just do X, Y, Z. This is a fight, and as we know, fight math doesn't add up. The way that you've seen him deal with somebody else may not even be the way that he approaches me. So I'm in there with an open mind, and like, this is combat. Combat is chaotic, and combat is different every time. Like, I think honestly, it comes down to execution, and that's going to be the deciding factor. I know that Timmy's well rounded, but I think in a lot of areas there are things where he comes up short against me.
I like that. Now, you're obviously a very cerebral guy when it comes to planning and fighting. You can tell just by talking to you. I've heard a lot of fighters talk about the different ways they watch film. They watch it before training camp, and then, kind of tune it out after that. They watch it with coaches. They watch it on their own. What's your approach to watching film when it comes to preparing for a guy like Timothy Cuamba?
I do watch a lot of footage. I like to watch footage of the wins and the losses. And yeah, I like to see tendencies. I like to see what people do in certain situations. I also like to visualize and watch and see people's mentalities at the same time. I feel like I'm a real good read when it comes to people's faces and people's reactions to stress, so to speak. So I really do like to watch footage, but at the same time, I've watched footage, and then when I fought, it was a totally different ballgame against some individuals, right? So I go in there with an open mind, and I go in there mainly just focused on myself and what I'm going to do. And that's what seems to be what's prevailed for the past 13 years for me.
Well, I love that mentality, and obviously it is clearly working for you. So I usually like to end these things with the big question. How do you see this one ending come August 29th when you step in there with Timothy Cuamba?
I feel I'm going to finish him before the end of the second round.
And we got any specific predictions, or we keeping it loose?
We keeping it loose, but I'm coming out with a finish, and I'm taking that contract right from Dana, brother.
All right. Well, you heard it here first, folks. This has been Mateo Vogel, who fights Timothy Cuamba at Dana White Contender Series Week 4. Once again, that fight is on August 29th. Mateo, thank you so much for the time, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, brother.